the 2000 presidential campaign, George Bush ran an attack ad against his opponent, Al Gore.
The Bush prescription plan for seniors choose.
And at the end of the ad, it said, "Bureaucrats decide." And for a brief second, for about a 30th of a second, the letters RATS got very large.
When this came out, it was a very big deal for at least 1.5 news cycles.
Some people in the advertising industry say they believe the inclusion of the word rats was intentional, even if it was not designed to send a subliminal or subconscious message.
Now, that is not an accident.
Will Robinson is a Democratic media consultant not associated with the Gore campaign. He finds it implausible that no one noticed the word rats when the ad was in production.
Someone made a decision to put that word up on screen and make it part of the spot. And they worked hard to make sure it was that way.
The Bush campaign, of course, has denied this. They say that it was an accident.
Just ask the man who made the so-called rats ad, Republican consultant Alex Castellanos.
Let me see if I can say this more clearly for you. I didn't know it was there. It's a ridiculous thing. There is no secret rat strategy to win an election that I'm aware of.
You had both Gore and Lieberman decrying this use of subliminal advertising.
I find it a very disappointing development. I've never seen anything quite like it.
George Bush was forced to do his best to disassociate himself from this entire thing, which he actually did very effectively.
You know, the idea of putting subliminal messages in the ads, I don't think we need to be subliminal about the differences between our views. Subliminal messages. You talk about subliminal.
So if the guy can't pronounce it, he couldn't have been behind it, I guess.
The ad is run 4,400 times in 16 states, including big battlegrounds like Florida, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania.
Did she say Florida?
Have a fake reporter who's actually a public relations professional. And this story goes out to newsrooms around the country.
So there are people watching a program that they think is news, but the actual news reports aren't news reports at all, but are paid advertisements that look like news reports.
This is someone pushing a product, but it's presented as a fair and balanced report, which it, of course, isn't. Hundreds of channels. Can they all be doing this? What matters, though, is not the channels. It's who owns those channels. And that issue of media consolidation is critical.
The rise in the use of video news releases has a great deal to do with the conglomeration of the mass media. Because as more and more TV stations around the country come to be owned by the fewer and fewer players, there's more and more cost-cutting that goes on in the newsrooms of these stations.
You know, when you look at a media environment where only 5 or 6 companies control the vast majority of the world's media, and they work in collaboration with each other, and they share members of boards of directors and things of that nature, like in the same way that I say we have to broaden our concept of subliminal, I think we also have to broaden our concept of what a conspiracy is.
They're using our airwaves, and they have a responsibility to bring out the full diversity of opinion and to get to the truth, not to bring you news stories that are disguised as their own when they're beating the drums for war.
It was time to head to our nation's capital to speak with some government officials about this type of media manipulation.
The campaign has been one of disinformation and misinformation. The war in Iraq was based on lies. That's generally accepted. It's interesting there's been no consequences.
This administration has sunk to the lowest level to use media and to use certain forms of it to deceive the nation.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Threat to the United States.
There's dozens of ballistic missiles. It has sponsored and sheltered terrorists.
Paying suicide
Chemical
bombers.
weapons are equally
biological weapons, including anthrax and botulism toxin.
biological and chemical agent to kill millions of people.
I remember Secretary of State saying we have to take the war to them before they bring it to us.
It simply makes no sense to wait any longer.
Take action before it's too late. Delay in decision and inaction could lead to a massive and sudden harm.
But there should be criminal implications for this kind of behavior.
I think it's both subliminal and definitely very obvious. I mean, you have in the lead up to protests, the alert levels going up, people being afraid.
What's fear do to people? Number one, it blocks their thinking. And if you continue to drum away that we're in danger of being attacked all the time, then people do not broaden their thoughts.
It's our responsibility as journalists to let the public know who is paid by what corporation, or if they're representing the government. Otherwise, it's unforgivable. The media is our lens on the world, and it is absolutely critical we trust that media. Because ultimately, when people are terrorized, when people are targeted, when people are marginalized, that does not make any of us safer.
Peace, not war, is our natural condition. Those who would bid us to war must be challenged.
The U.S. government and military has poured hundreds of millions of dollars into propagandizing the Iraqi people, in paying newspapers, reporters, editors to plant stories in Iraqi media. Now, what does this do when you talk about the U.S. military forces moving forward and there being victory, and Iraqis on the ground seeing that what they're seeing in their newspapers and on television doesn't reflect the reality? It undermines any kind of growth of democracy, because then they have no confidence, no trust of their media.
Call me crazy, but I started to wonder if similar PSYOPs techniques were being used here at home, against us.
In this country, we have a law, the Smith-Mundt Act, against propagandizing our own population. It goes back to the Nazis in World War II, and we saw the dangers of that. It's all justified by saying, no, it's giving information to other countries. But Donald Rumsfeld has made it pretty clear that the success will be when it blows back. So you plant a story there, and it gets quoted back here. The war is really being waged at home, the war on truth.
In today's day and age, as we know, information is global and instantaneous, so the ability to keep information out of American hands is extremely difficult.
My research also revealed the existence of classified and highly advanced military equipment that could potentially alter moods and modify behavior on a subconscious level. Another expert in this field is Dr. Nick Begich, Executive Director of the Lay Institute on Technology. He's written several books on the subject, including Controlling the Human Mind and Angels Don't Play This Harp.
You know, the Gulf War was interesting. The first Gulf War in the early 90s, when the whole war was taking place, we were asked often, are there new systems being used here? Because the way in which one of the largest armies in the world essentially gave up. I mean, it was like children in an elementary school on their first fire drill, running out of the bunkers and surrendering. And from my perspective, it looked like one of these technologies for influencing behavior had been applied, and it was the Scottish media after the war that reported on Project Solo.
Now we have very sophisticated systems like Commando Solo, C-130, that's basically an airborne television radio station that circles the area, broadcasting the message directly in that you want to have the enemy receive.
But one of the other things they do is they piggyback signals on other carriers. In other words, the broadcast already going on in the area. In other words, the Muslim music and prayers that all of these troops were listening to every day, they would piggyback a signal on that would create anxiety and fear as an emotional state. Close these technologies. This changes everything. One of the finest articles on the subject is an article called The Mind Has No Firewalls. And if you look at it, it is a fine explanation of all of the various ways to carry a signal in that would influence human behavior at a distance. Whether you use TV, radio, electrical grids, the internet, all of these things can be effectively used and have been demonstrated. These technologies that we're talking about today because the American public wouldn't accept them, because the American public would see them as a violation of the Constitution, the only way they could be introduced is an environment of fear. And what environment do we have today?
You know, this is an Occam issue. Occam's razor. The simplistic stuff works.
Then why did the government and military conduct secret experiments on the general public with projects like MKUltra in the 50s and 60s?
But the idea first was they looked at chemical means, telepathy, LSD, all of the psychoactive drugs to see what would happen. They also started to look at electromagnetic means, even as early as that, to manipulate behavior. Eventually, it came out on the President's Commission on the CIA activities within the United States that eventually showed that the CIA had been involved, and the FBI involved, and other agencies involved in mind control techniques being applied against American citizens without consent. And MKUltra was a part of that.
And what